Good evening and thanks very much for joining us. I'm Brittany Ramsey. A strong message today directed at local MP Patty Hajdu. Her constituents are tired of broken promises relating to climate change action. Dozens rallied outside the health minister's office this afternoon in conjunction with similar movements held across the country by 350.org. Corey Nordstrom reports.
Climate justice, no action.
Dozens of area residents gathered outside of Patty Hajdu's office to make sure the Liberal MP is listening, that promises mean nothing at this stage, and the people want real solutions with the effects of climate change increasingly evident.
It's been 9 different climate targets that Canada has set, and it's reached none of them, 0.
To not feel protected by the politicians who should be responsible for ensuring the safety of our future is very disheartening, but we're very hopeful that more action is to follow.
Speaker Shadia Aidid represents fossil fuel Lakehead and says the climate crisis should be among the chief concerns for Hajdu, the country's health minister.
You cannot separate the two. Air pollution, water pollution, the displacements of people from their land and communities, these are all health issues. And I think that with our health minister needs to be at the forefront of battling of the climate crisis that we have and all of the injustices as well as the health impacts and health injustices that come from destroying our planet.
By no coincidence, fires have raged here in the Northwest and British Columbia, coming at the same time as record-breaking rainfall in China, which caused devastating floods. Attendees say it's a clear sign a wake-up call is needed.
Like, look around you. You're seeing the smoky skies. You're breathing it in. Like, it's only going to get worse. And like, as a matter of how big the issue is, it's happening all around the world.
Berger also delivered a pledge for Hajdu to sign, along with a commitment to do better for the environment.
To put a moratorium on fossil fuel projects that are being built right now, freeze the ones that are being built and stop approving new ones. The day's rally was one of 30 being done across the country outside of politicians' office, looking to change their minds and demanding more support for the fight against climate change. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Meanwhile, forest fires in northwestern Ontario continue to rage. 10 new fires were reported today by the MNRF. The active total now sits at 138 fires across the region. After a slower day of fire activity yesterday, Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand says the fire hazard has seen a rebound with forests drying out and more lightning-caused fires emerging. There are currently 156 out-of-province firefighters assisting with the blazes in the region, including 14 firefighters from the Maritimes, 28 from Alberta, 101 from Mexico, and a 20-person incident management team from Australia. Well, that team will soon be assisting communities in the Red Lake area where the fires have hit the hardest. Marchand says ultimately the biggest help will be from Mother Nature.
And that's the way it has been for several weeks now. We had that long extended run of really hot, dry temperatures and high winds, and now we've sort of settled back into these seasonal normals where we're seeing rainfall come through, but it's really not addressing the deeper drought conditions that we have on the landscape in a wide sense.
While some areas like Deer Lake have received upwards of 10 millimeters of rain recently, Marchand says no areas have seen enough rainfall to have a true impact in bringing the fires under control. An underage teenager charged with making repeated threats against Hammersholt High School during the 2018-2019 academic year has been sentenced to 12 months probation after pleading guilty to public mischief. The youth, who was 14 at the time of their arrest in spring 2019, can't be named publicly. He was one of 2 people charged for the crimes. 14 threats were made against the school over the span of several months, resulting in 12 closures. The threats warned of shootings, bombs, and other suspicious packages at the Northside High School. none of which ever came to fruition. The threats cost Hammarskjöld more than $82,000, and the police spent more than $200,000 investigating the crimes. Justice Danilin McKinnon delivered the probationary sentence today, which was a joint submission of the Crown and the defense. The teen has been enrolled in community service and has abided by all terms of their release. The other accused, Emily Jade Pakrashi, who was 18 at the time of her arrest, still faces mischief charges. Her next court appearance is in August. Well, Thunder Bay Police have provided an update on a body that was recovered from the Nebing River on Tuesday. They were alerted to the discovery behind the Arthur Street Marketplace around 3:30 in the afternoon through a 911 call. Police say the body was that of a 49-year-old man, and his next of kin have been notified. A postmortem is scheduled to take place in Toronto on Friday, and police continue to hold the scene where the body was found. They're asking the public to avoid that area. New guidance from Ontario's chief medical officer has some parents breathing a little easier as the start of the new school year approaches. It spells out quarantine measures for unvaccinated students who come into contact with a COVID-positive individual, but many questions remain on how the new guidelines will actually work in a school setting. Colin DeMello has more.
As students prepare to return to the classroom for the first time since April, the province's new vaccination policy is giving some reassurance.
With the vaccines, going back to school will be a little more safer in terms of we won't have to go from being in person to online to back to in person being online.
Ontario's chief medical officer of health said those who are unvaccinated would face mandatory 10 days of self-isolation if they're exposed to someone with COVID-19 and would be required to take 2 tests 7 days apart. School boards are now trying to determine how best to implement that policy.
This is an extremely difficult discussion, and from an equity perspective, it seems not equitable.
The back-to-school vaccination rules have been followed by a vacuum of information on the new policy. Will students be required to submit their vaccination status when they register? Will students with 1 dose be treated as vaccinated or unvaccinated? And will educators be subject to the same rules as students?
We'd like to have as many people as possible vaccinated. And for those who aren't, we will be here to support them. But, there might be some repercussions for them going into a system where the expectation is the majority will be vaccinated.
There is also considerable anxiety among parents questioning exactly which age groups would be affected.
I'm hearing major concern from parents of children that are under 12. So, how is it fair that these much more difficult rules are being applied to children who simply don't qualify for the vaccine yet?
Critics are calling for immediate clarity.
This, again, shows us that the government has very poorly communicated to Ontarians what the expectations are.
The Premier says the back-to-school plan will be revealed next week.
Efforts to administer COVID-19 vaccines to Ontario's eligible population have now reached an important milestone. According to the Minister of Health, Christine Elliott, Ontario has now checked off one of the 4 requirements to lift most of the remaining pandemic restrictions, with 80% of the 12 and up population now partially immunized. Other requirements the province needs to reach include 75% of the population receiving their second dose. Meanwhile, sports tourism is rising from the ashes of COVID-19. Thunder Bay is set to host the Northern Ontario Disc Golf Championships over the weekend. The event will see nearly 150 out-of-town athletes come to the city. It's the first major event held in Thunder Bay since the onset of the pandemic and could have an economic impact north of $130,000. Avery McRae reports.
Nearly 200 men and women from coast to coast have made their way to the heart of northwestern Ontario, making this year's Northern Ontario Disc Golf Championship the largest disc golf event in the province since the pandemic began.
Thrilled. We've been here since last Saturday working on course infrastructure, so we're done with that now. We're kind of enjoying the fruits of our labors, and we've been here 5 years in a row, and this is kind of the pinnacle of what we've done so far, and really excited about it.
March 2020, it's in the rearview mirror right now, and it's been a long haul getting sport tourism back on track.
As far as pandemic-related regulations, gloves and hand sanitizer will be available for athletes, and social distancing should be maintained, but the outdoor event does not require masks. The sport itself plays very similar to regular golf, with competitors playing 2 rounds a day at various courses in the city. Dragon Hills Golf Course, which boasts the toughest track in the province, will serve as the main venue for the two-day event, with rounds also scheduled for Bayview Disc Golf Course in Pass Lake for Saturday and Birch Point Disc Golf Course at Boulevard Lake Sunday.
They're kind of a hidden gem in the province, so this is a way that we can bring more awareness to the courses. We can invite people up here to experience them, and maybe even expand disc golf here in Thunder Bay for the long term.
A provincial or Canadian championship, and the Canadian championship would be the ultimate. That would be about 500 to 600 competitors here. We will probably need another course to host that type of an event.
Cameron notes Strathcona Golf Course has been looked at as a potential spot to add another course for a national event, but nothing has been finalized. The CEDC did provide $10,000 in funding prior to the event to upgrade the city's existing courses. And Ozelin says Thunder Bay could see a national event in 2 to 3 years' time. But as for the weekend, he encourages everyone in the community to come out and enjoy.
We've got shops set up. You can grab discs. We've got our sponsors set up. We've got, 200 of Canada's best disc golfers out here to show you how to do it, and maybe open your eyes a little bit to the hidden gem that Thunder Bay disc golf is.
Avery McRae, TBT News.
Well, for the second straight year, the pandemic is taking some of the Festa out of the Festa Italiana. There will be no live entertainment, vendor booths, or fireworks during the annual celebration, but don't worry, there will still be plenty of delicious food. Now, festival goers can expect long lines for takeout outside the Italian Cultural Center on Sunday and Monday as they seek out their food fix this long weekend. Festa Chair Benny Melchiore says last summer about 5,000 people still came by to pick up pasta, meatballs, gnocchi, and more, but that's only about a quarter of the pre-pandemic norm.
It was a big success as far as the food takeout was, but what we missed was our social things with the community. Seeing 10,000 people a day going through the parking lot every day, it's a good feeling, and that's what we missed the most last year. And people has been asking since in the last 3 months, been asking, are we going to have the Festa this year? Are we going to have the Festa? And unfortunately, we didn't have an answer for them.
Melchiore says the pandemic restrictions simply weren't lifted in time to plan a full-scale event this year. He hopes next year the Festa will be back not just to what it was pre-COVID, but bigger and better than ever.
Festa is the best. And Benny, one of the greatest guys in this city, just greatest human beings in general. Amazing, amazing. Great to see it coming back in Thunder Bay. Great to see Avery McRae.